In the star-choked expanse of the Andromeda Galaxy, light years beyond the Milky Way's familiar glow, resided the Xylar Council. Picture, if you will, a parliament of pulsating bioluminescent jellyfish, each representing a different sector of the Xylar ascendancy. Their chambers, a vast obsidian monolith drifting through the void, hummed with the quiet efficiency of a civilization obsessed with order. For millennia, the Xylar had governed their corner of the cosmos with unwavering adherence to protocol. Their technology was formidable, capable of bending space and time, yet their society remained as inflexible as a neutron star. Every decision, every interaction, was meticulously catalogued, analyzed, and subjected to layers upon layers of bureaucratic review. It was this very dedication to predictability that led centuries ago to the great human exclusion. A series of, shall we say, unfortunate incidents involving human explorers and Xylar dignitaries culminated in a unanimous council decree. Humans were deemed unpredictable variables, a threat to the delicate balance of the Xylar's meticulously planned existence. The official record stated the ban was for the safety of all sentient species. Unofficially, it was because a human ambassador once mistook a Xylar High Counselor for a particularly elaborate chandelier, resulting in an incident involving a ceremonial plasma discharge and a very awkward apology. Thus, humanity was banished from Xylar space, confined to the fringes of the galaxy, a cosmic pariah deemed too chaotic to be trusted. The Xylar returned to their meticulously ordered lives, content in the knowledge that the universe, at least within their jurisdiction, was once again safe from surprises. Little did they know, a single unassuming human was about to turn their perfectly ordered world upside down. Meanwhile, far beyond the neat, orderly borders of Xylar space, a different kind of drama was unfolding. Aboard the Rusty Bucket, a freighter that looked like it had lost a fight with a space kraken, and then been used as a target for asteroid practice, a lone figure drifted through the inky black. This was Jake. Not exactly the kind of individual one might expect to be single-handedly dismantling galactic law. He was sprawled in a gravity couch that had seen better centuries, nursing a beverage of questionable origin. The freighter's internal lights flickered erratically, casting long, dancing shadows across walls adorned with more duct tape than actual metal. The Rusty Bucket was a marvel of engineering, mostly in the sense that it was a marvel it hadn't exploded yet. Its navigation system sputtered and whined, its life support emitted a disconcerting wheeze, and the general ambiance suggested a strong possibility of imminent structural collapse. Jake, however, seemed utterly unfazed. He wore a t-shirt that read, "I need more space," a sentiment that was either ironic or profoundly accurate, given his current predicament. His dark hair was perpetually disheveled, his eyes held a glint of amusement, and his general demeanor suggested a man who had long ago made peace with the absurdity of existence. Despite his relaxed appearance, there was a sharpness about Jake, a quiet intelligence that hinted at more than met the eye. He possessed the kind of laid-back resourcefulness that allowed him to fix a hyperdrive with a paperclip and a rusty spoon. A skill set that was about to come in very handy indeed. He was, after all, human. And humans, as the Xylar were about to rediscover, had a knack for getting into trouble. Suddenly, piercing the quiet hum of the Rusty Bucket's barely functional engines, came a series of sharp, insistent beeps. Red lights began to flash on the freighter's control panel, a development that Jake regarded with mild interest before taking another swig of his drink. "Well, that's new," he muttered, without making any move to investigate. He figured whatever it was, it could probably wait until his caffeine levels were replenished. Unbeknownst to Jake, his leisurely jaunt through forbidden space had not gone unnoticed. A Xylar patrol ship, the Vigilant, had detected what its sensors identified as a warp signature anomaly emanating from the vicinity of the Rusty Bucket. On the bridge of the Vigilant, Commander Zorgon, a being whose very scales seemed to be ironed, consulted his tactical display. "Identify source," he barked, his voice a precise, modulated tone that brooked no argument. "Commander," chirped a junior officer, his voice trembling slightly. "The signature originates from a vessel, unregistered, and emitting distinctly unstable warp resonances. Zorgon's multifaceted eyes narrowed. Unstable? Explain. Sir, readings indicate deviations from established warp physics, minor temporal distortions, possible causality violations. The junior officer swallowed nervously. And the vessel appears to be human. The bridge fell silent. The word human hung in the air like a toxic particle. Zorgon's mandibles clicked in displeasure. Humans, he hissed. After all this time, Protocol 7 Gamma is now in effect. Protocol 7 Gamma, as every Xylar officer knew, was the procedure for dealing with unauthorized human incursions into Xylar space. It involved immediate interception, thorough investigation, and, if necessary, application of corrective measures. It was a protocol born of centuries of bureaucratic paranoia and deeply ingrained cultural bias. Back on the rusty bucket, Jake finally decided to address the insistent beeping. All right, I'm coming, he grumbled, pushing himself up from the gravity couch. He sauntered over to the control panel, gave it a perfunctory tap, and squinted at the flashing lights. That can't be good. As he was pondering the situation, a booming voice filled the rusty bucket's comm system. Unidentified vessel. This is the Xylar patrol ship, Vigilant. You are in violation of established space treaties and are ordered to halt immediately for inspection. Jake blinked. Well, that's just rude, he muttered to himself. He grabbed the comm mic. Hi, Vigilant. This is the rusty bucket. And, I wasn't really planning on halting, is that all right? The silence that followed was thick enough to spread on toast. On the Vigilant, Zorgon stared at his comm console in disbelief. Did the human just ask if it was all right to disobey a direct order? The junior officer gulped. Affirmative, Commander. The human appears to be requesting permission to remain in violation. Zorgon's mandibles clicked again, this time with a distinct note of fury. This is precisely why humans were banned from space. Their utter disregard for established procedure. Prepare a boarding party. We will show this human the consequences of his rudeness. Meanwhile, Jake, oblivious to the impending storm, was rummaging through a box of spare parts, humming to himself. Now, where did I put that universal translator? The cultural clash was about to begin, and it promised to be spectacular. With a hiss of compressed air, the boarding ramp of the Vigilant extended and locked onto the rusty bucket. Commander Zorgon, flanked by two heavily armed Xylar troopers, marched purposefully into the derelict freighter. The air inside was thick with the smell of stale pizza and something vaguely resembling motor oil, a far cry from the sterile, climate-controlled environment of the Vigilant. By the great regulator, Zorgon muttered, his olfactory sensors twitching in disgust. The level of disorder is simply unacceptable. Jake, who had been attempting to fix a sputtering coffee maker with a wrench and a roll of duct tape, glanced up with a cheerful grin. Hey there, come on in. Don't mind the mess, I'm, renovating. Zorgon's multifaceted eyes narrowed further. Renovating? You are in violation of approximately 374 articles of the Xylar Space Code, prepared to be boarded and inspected according to Protocol 42 Delta, subsection 9. He gestured sharply, and the troopers advanced, their energy rifles raised. Jake shrugged. All right, no need to get your scales in a twist, just try not to, break anything. This place is held together with hope and spare parts. As the troopers began their methodical search, Jake returned to his coffee maker, muttering under his breath. He gave the machine another violent shake. Suddenly, with a loud bang, the coffee maker sputtered back to life, spewing a geyser of lukewarm brown liquid across the compartment. One of the Xylar troopers, caught in the splash zone, let out a startled squawk. The brown liquid dripped from his armor, leaving a sticky residue. Contamination! I am contaminated! He shrieked, triggering a flurry of agitated gestures from Zorgon. Report. What is the nature of the contaminant? Zorgon demanded, his voice tight with anxiety. Unknown, Commander, but it is hot and bitter. The trooper recoiled, attempting to wipe the substance from his faceplate only to smear it further. Jake, ever the helpful host, chuckled. "Whoops, sorry about that, just a little enthusiastic. Here, let me get you a towel." He rummaged through a pile of greasy rags and offered one to the sputtering trooper. Zorgon stared at the scene in disbelief. The trooper, now covered in coffee and wielding a questionable rag, looked utterly defeated. The rusty bucket, it seemed, was already exacting its toll. The second trooper, attempting to scan a pile of what appeared to be discarded circuit boards, accidentally kicked a loose cable. The lights in the compartment flickered and died, plunging the boarding party into darkness. "Report," Zorgon barked, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. "Commander, power failure, cause unknown." "Recommend immediate resumption of power," Jake quipped from the darkness, "unless you want to find your way back to the ramp." Zorgon ground his mandibles. "Restore power, immediately, and someone get me a status report on that contaminant." After several moments of fumbling, the lights flickered back on, revealing Jake grinning innocently amidst the chaos. The trooper covered in coffee was still attempting to clean himself, while the other was gingerly poking at the circuit boards with his rifle. "You call this a ship?" Zorgon boomed, his voice dripping with disdain. "It is a hazard to navigation, a monument to disrepair, and a flagrant violation of every safety regulation in the galaxy." Jake shrugged again. "Well, she's got character." He paused, then added with a mischievous grin, "And a surprisingly effective security system, apparently." Zorgon's patience, already stretched thin, finally snapped. "Enough. I am confiscating this vessel and taking you into custody. Your blatant disregard for protocol will not be tolerated." He gestured sharply at the troopers. "Restrain him." As the troopers advanced, Jake held up his hands in mock surrender. All right, you win. But before you drag me off to Xylar Space Jail, can I at least finish my root beer?" He pointed to a dusty container sitting on a nearby shelf. "It's been a long day." Zorgon hesitated. What is root beer?" Jake smiled innocently. "Oh, just a little something I picked up on Earth. Want to try some?" Zorgon eyed the container with suspicion. It was a simple, cylindrical can, labeled in a language he didn't recognize, presumably Terran. His scanners, however, were going wild. "Report," he barked at the nearest trooper. "Analysis of the root beer container." The trooper fumbled with his scanner, his multifaceted eyes wide with alarm. "Commander, the readings are inconsistent. High levels of carbonation detected, along with unidentified organic compounds. The substance appears to be highly unstable." Zorgon's mandibles clicked together in a gesture of deep concern. Unstable? Organic compounds? Could this be some form of bioweapon? He turned his gaze back to Jake, his eyes narrowed. "What exactly is this root beer, human?" Jake shrugged, his expression a picture of innocent bewilderment. "Just a drink. Like refreshment. It's sweet, it's fizzy, it's got a bit of a kick, what's not to like?" He reached for the can, as if to demonstrate. "Do not touch it." Zorgon snapped, his voice echoing through the cramped freighter. "This could be a highly dangerous substance. Protocol 88 Theta must be initiated immediately. We must neutralize the threat before it can be unleashed." He turned to his troopers, his voice filled with urgency. "Prepare for immediate containment. I want a full-spectrum scan of the area. Identify any potential hazards and establish a perimeter. This root beer is not to be taken lightly." The troopers sprang into action, their movements precise and efficient. One began deploying a series of energy shields around the immediate vicinity of the can, while the other activated a portable containment unit. "Commander," the first trooper reported, "scanners indicate a high concentration of sugary compounds. The substance appears to be highly addictive." Zorgon recoiled as if struck. "Addictive? By the great regulator, they are even more devious than we thought. They lure us in with promises of refreshment, then enslave us with their addictive concoctions." Jake stared at the Xylar in utter disbelief. "Dude, it's just a soda. I promise it's not gonna mind control you or anything. He paused, then added with a grin, unless you really like the taste, I guess. Zorgon ignored him, his mind racing. He had to act quickly. This root beer represented a clear and present danger to the Xylar collective. He couldn't risk it falling into the wrong hands, or worse, mouths. Prepare for immediate disarming, he commanded, his voice grim. I am initiating decontamination protocol 7 Gamma. All personnel, brace yourselves. Zorgon, with a dramatic flourish, pressed a sequence of buttons on his wrist-mounted console. A high-pitched whine filled the freighter as the Xylar's standard decontamination protocol initiated. For the glory of the collective, he proclaimed, more to steel his own nerves than to inspire his troops. Suddenly, a series of nozzles extended from the ceiling, spraying a thick green foam. The foam was designed to neutralize any known biological, chemical, or, well, apparently root beer-based threats. It was overkill, of course, but Xylar protocols rarely accounted for subtlety. The foam engulfed the can of root beer. At first, nothing happened. Then with a loud hiss, the can began to expand. The pressure inside, combined with the neutralizing agents, proved too much. Pop! The can exploded, sending a geyser of root beer and green foam erupting into the cramped confines of the freighter. The Xylar troopers yelped, their meticulously polished armor now coated in a sticky brown and green goo. Zorgon sputtered, his multifaceted eyes stinging as root beer dripped from his antennae. Jake, meanwhile, stood back, chuckling softly. Whoa, guess that wasn't supposed to happen, he said, feigning surprise. Maybe you guys should have just, tried opening it normally. He reached into his pocket and pulled out another can of root beer, offering it to Zorgon. Here, let me show you. Negative, do not approach, Zorgon shrieked, waving his appendage wildly. This is clearly a diversionary tactic. The human seeks to further contaminate the area with his weaponized beverage. The other Xylar troopers, struggling to wipe the foam from their eyes, aimed their disruptor rifles at Jake. The scene was utter chaos, sticky foam everywhere, the air thick with the scent of sassafras and decontamination chemicals, and a group of highly trained soldiers looking thoroughly ridiculous. Back on the Xylar command ship, the Council observed the unfolding events with growing consternation. The images transmitted from Zorgon's helmet cam were perplexing, to say the least. Report, Councillor Vlar demanded, his voice echoing across the chamber. What is the status of decontamination protocol 7 Gamma? Councillor, a nervous-sounding officer replied. The protocol appears to have been compromised. The weaponized substance has breached containment and is currently coating the entire vessel. Vlar's mandibles twitched in disbelief. Coating? How is this possible? Our protocols are designed to neutralize any conceivable threat. Another counselor, a wizened elder named Xylo, spoke up. Perhaps, he croaked, we have underestimated the ingenuity of the humans. Their weapons appear to be far more insidious than we initially believed. The council exchanged worried glances. The situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. And it all started with a can of root beer. Jake sighed, taking a swig from another can of root beer as if he were watching a particularly bad holovid. Guys, seriously, it's just a drink. We have, entire planets filled with this stuff. Zorgon, still dripping, could only splutter. Planets filled with weaponized beverages? The feed from Zorgon's helmet cam was patched through to the Xylar Council. Councillor Vlar pinched one of his sensory antennae. He claims entire planets are filled with this root beer? The incredulity was palpable, even across interstellar comms. Jake shrugged, oblivious to the high-stakes galactic misunderstanding he was currently orchestrating. Yeah, well, not filled exactly. We have, factories and stuff. We make it. It's, for parties, watching sports, general relaxation. He paused. Look, you guys want one? I got, a case of it back here. The council members exchanged frantic glances. Strategic reserves, Councillor Xylo wheezed, his voice barely audible. He speaks of strategic reserves. Flar's multifaceted eyes widened. He envisioned entire worlds awash in the fizzy brown liquid ready to be deployed as a weapon at a moment's notice. The ban was justified, perhaps even insufficient. Back on the derelict freighter, Jake popped open another can of root beer, the satisfying hiss echoing in the suddenly silent corridor. He offered it again to the still sputtering Zorgon. "Seriously, try it. It's pretty good. Goes great." With pizza rolls. The council, witnessing this scene of casual, almost insulting generosity, began to reassess everything they thought they knew about humanity. Were they facing a species of master strategists capable of disguising their most potent weapons as sugary drinks? Or were humans just incredibly weird? The answer, they suspected, was probably both and equally terrifying. The holographic projection of the Xylar Council shimmered into existence before Jake, their multifaceted eyes conveying a sense of urgency that transcended their usual bureaucratic monotone. "Human. Jake," Counselor Vlar began, his voice laced with an uncharacteristic tremor. "We have encountered a situation." Jake leaned back against a stack of empty root beer cartons, casually scratching his chin. "Let me guess, more foam-related incidents? You guys really gotta work on your containment protocols, you know?" Counselor Xylo, his gills fluttering rapidly, cut in. "This is beyond beverage malfunctions. We have detected an unprecedented space anomaly, a tear of sorts in the fabric of reality itself." The image shifted, displaying a swirling vortex of colors that defied all known Xylar physics. It pulsed with an energy that made their advanced sensors shudder. "Our calculations are insufficient," Vlar admitted, a statement so shocking it was almost a declaration of galactic war. "The usual formulas, they do not apply. We cannot predict its behavior, its consequences, anything." Jake took another swig of root beer, the bubbles audibly popping in the sudden silence. He was the only human that they could speak to. The only human that had shown them that perhaps things weren't as they seemed. "And you need my help with space hiccups?" "Your so primitive technology," Counselor Zorgon said, his voice regaining some of its usual stiffness, "detected the warp signature anomaly that led us to you. Your unique perspective on highly unstable beverages suggests you possess a different understanding of the universe." Vlar jumped back in. "We acknowledge that our long-held assumptions about humanity may have been inaccurate. Your culture, though perplexing, clearly operates on principles we do not comprehend. It is with considerable reluctance and a degree of desperation that we request your assistance." He paused, each syllable heavy with the weight of centuries of Xylar pride. "We beg you to return, to help us avoid the end of all things." Jake considered the swirling vortex on the screen, then glanced down at the half-empty bottle of root beer in his hand. The fate of the galaxy, resting on the shoulders of a guy with a soft spot for fizzy sugar water. It was almost too ridiculous to be true. He chuckled. All right. You talked me into it." A collective sigh of relief, or its Xylar equivalent, seemed to ripple through the holographic council. "You accept?" Counselor Vlar asked, sounding genuinely surprised. "Sure, why not?" Jake shrugged. "It's not like I have any pressing engagements. Besides, I'm almost out of root beer. Figured I could swing by Earth and grab a case or two." He paused, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Maybe introduce you guys to pizza while I'm at it. Just try not to decontaminate it, okay?" The Xylar Council, for once, was speechless. They just exchanged worried glances. And so, with a reluctant agreement in place, Jake turned his freighter towards the swirling anomaly. And as a result of the events, it happened that the Xylar Council, eating a slice of pizza, officially rescinded the centuries-old ban on humans in space. The announcement was broadcast across the galactic networks, causing ripples of confusion and disbelief. The very idea of humanity, previously relegated to the status of unpredictable, Variables, now free to roam the cosmos, was to say the least unsettling. The first human ships began to trickle, then flow into previously forbidden sectors. Some were explorers, some were traders, and some, much to the dismay of the Xylar, were just tourists looking for the best space burgers. The universe, it seemed, was about to get a whole lot more human. The galaxy didn't explode, thankfully, but it did get a whole lot stickier. Within months, root beer became the trendiest drink across Xylar space, surpassing even the revered algae nectar in popularity. Xylar toddlers demanded it. Xylar elders pondered its flavor complexities, and entire research divisions were dedicated to reverse engineering its recipe, with limited success, of course. One could often find Xylar citizens gathered around shimmering holographic displays, rewatching Jake's initial encounter with the patrol ship, mimicking his relaxed posture and sarcastic comments, which were, of course, terribly mistranslated. Even Commander Zorgon, after a mandatory sensitivity training course on human culture, was seen sporting a t-shirt with a crudely drawn image of a root beer bottle, though he still maintained that the beverage was a tactical oversight on humanity's part, and so humanity was no longer banned. Instead, they were almost annoyingly welcome. Earth became a must-see tourist destination, with eager aliens snapping photos of mundane human activities like mowing the lawn or arguing over parking spaces. The universe had learned a valuable, if somewhat sticky, lesson. Sometimes the greatest threats aren't weapons of mass destruction, but rather the simple, sweet, and utterly baffling things that make us, well, human. And that maybe, just maybe, a little bit of unpredictability isn't such a bad thing after all.